Okay, I'm back. And let me just turn down. I get to different audio feeds. So I'm back here, and let's see how the audio is today. My quest to get acceptable audio keeps going. So I did change a little bit. I removed the noise suppression and replaced it with voice isolation. So I removed the noise suppression that's built into OBS, the streaming application I use, and I instead used voice isolation in the operating system, and that seemed to be at least better. After last night, I checked some parts of the audio, and it seemed that it didn't cut off my words anymore anyway. Still a bit distorted, but at least no half words here and there. But I still found the audio to go silent now and then. And that's most likely that caused by the fact that I didn't keep the microphone very close to me. As far as I understand, at least if you do a stream and you don't really have any chance to adjust the audio like I usually do in a video editor, it's better to keep the microphone close. So I try to avoid that because it annoys me to have this in front of my face. But if it sounds better, I guess I'm going to have to live with it. So I'm going to try that today. And I did a quick and dirty setup here just a few minutes before I was going to start this, and just to see how it works out. So hopefully this might be it, and hopefully the sound is going to be okay today, so I can give that a rest. And then let's get back to the subject at hand. So I've been working a little bit on the weapon system lately, and I have done a few updates to how we're going to handle the user interface. And one big thing is that I'm replacing my old canvas-based user interface with UI Toolkit. Even though it lacks a few features, I'm trying to find solutions for those features, so it's going to work out anyway, because looking forward, that's how user interface is going to be done in Unity, and it's also more similar to how you do it in Unreal, which I also like, because I don't mind jumping between applications, so if I use Unreal, the more similarity, the better. So I was going to try to wire up. Now I have some data. I have the player weapon and it has levels. So I have some data to work with that can be in the HUD. So I'm going to try to wire it up with the new runtime bindings and see if I can get that to work out. I can also show this. So I just did this morning I finished up some, I keep improving on my build system, and there I spelled something wrong. Well, let's leave it to that, because I just gonna merge this back. And let's make a new branch for the runtime bindings. So I'm just gonna pull down my merge. And let's make a, okay, now I'm gonna have to adjust my keyboard because of this microphone. So I'm gonna type even worse, I suppose. So UI, right, runtime bindings. So there we have a branch to work with. One thing I did, because I showed the other day how I dealt with vector masks, and I created an asset, a scriptable object, as a physical asset on disk. I have removed that, and I do create that at runtime now. So this mask here is actually runtime generated, which I prefer because then I can actually create new scriptable objects at runtime. So just a few tweaks. And one reason I want to do that is because the radar is the only part of the HUD that I want to keep a little bit flexible and be able to change in size. And I actually had decided to accept that I'm going to remove that feature when I go to UI Toolkit and have it at a static size no matter what, just because the vector mask was static on disk. But now I can actually restore, so I can let the radar grow. So if you are on a wider screen, you get a little bit bigger radar. If you are on a narrower screen, you get a little bit smaller radar. So I did a little, very simple. I can add a few attributes to this class here, but let's see, where did I put this? UI HUD radar mask element. So basically, I just create here a scriptable object, an instance on the fly. And instead of saving it to disk that I did before, I just keep it, hold on to it in this element. And this might not be the fastest process to do live. I'm not sure really what happens under the hood here when you do like this. But that doesn't really matter because it's not supposed to keep changing in size. It's going to set the size when the game starts or if you resize your window. So then I guess it's okay that it can, if it takes a little bit more performance, because it's never going to happen on a frame-by-frame basis. So I'm just going to expose a few settings here to this element so I can quickly, in the UI builder, set the corner and the distance here, and then it can calculate the center area based on how much width it gets. And then it's going to be good enough. And one reason too this is nice to have happening during runtime is because the actual radar, so now I've been experimenting here a bit, but the actual radar is here, and on top of the radar I have a frame. That frame is a sprite, and it's a 9 slice sprite, so I can resize it while still keeping the corners sharp. And now I can do the same with the vector mask by just adding a little bit logic to it, so I can keep the corners sharp in the mask and then resize the center area. So that's quite high on my agenda to implement zone. And then I'm going to be very happy with this new UI Toolkit based radar. So that was a little catch up on a few changes. And I've been cleaning up the user interface, or the entire game screen. I had so much stuff going on here for different tests that didn't have to be here. So I got rid of a bunch of those. And one thing I implemented this morning that I find quite handy, because I have stuff that keeps annoying me, like the touch controller. I don't need it to be in view while I work in the editor, so I want to have it turned off. Because I playtest on the keyboard in the editor, and once I build it, I need it to be turned on, of course. And very easy to forget to turn stuff back on when you make a build. If you have a lot of stuff, I turn off my on-screen profiler, and I'm probably going to have more things that can annoy me in editor, but I want them to be enabled once I do the build. So I add a little component here, build enable, that makes sure that anything that should be enabled is always enabled in the builds, and then I don't have to remember to turn them back on. So I can save them with them turned off while I keep working on the game. So that's very handy. So now we're going to try to wire up and start removing the old canvas HUD that I have here, and remove it with the UI Toolkit and replace it with the UI Toolkit HUD. And so I'm going to do it part by part. First, I want to see if I can actually feed the data into it, because one big difference compared to how I used to do these kind of things with the old Canva system is that I trigger events and the HUD listens for those events, like now did score go up, or now did bombs go down 1 unit, and then the HUD updates. But now they're supposed to be able to do the same thing with runtime bindings. So I was hoping I could use that and get a little bit cleaner implementation, how the HUD gets updated during gameplay. So let's start there. So I'm gonna first add an ordinary label and see if we can wire that one up. And if that works fine, I'm gonna wire up my own. I have this non-allocation, the memory allocation for label. So I'm gonna wanna wire that one up then. And then we can start moving things into place. So let's start first to get some data into the current HUD. So we have my HUD here. And let's just add a label on the top here, maybe. Label. So the new runtime bindings you can find up here. So you can bind with an object. And that would be the easy way to do it, but I really don't like that, because that means that the scriptable object is going to have to update its data while you play. And while you can do that and it's okay to do that, I prefer not to, because okay, somebody is coming to our house, so the dog want to go out. It's probably delivery, so it's better not going out. So anyway, no, I don't want to use a scriptable object. I don't like to change data in them during runtime, because for once it actually updates the object on disk while you work in the editor, so I get dirty data in that one, and then I have to keep resetting that data or making some hacks that reset that data between playtimes, between gameplays. So I prefer to see scriptable object as pure data containers that store data that I use in the game, but it never changes. So I want to try this approach and use a type instead. And so then you have to inject your data source here, I suppose, and then you also can, for each element here, you can add the binding. Then you can hook up what, now I have nothing to bind to here, but we should be able to get something here. I saw the demonstration on, I don't know, maybe it was some YouTube video from GDC, or if it was Unite. Anyway, it looked quite handy, so shouldn't be that difficult to get this working. So let's just give this label here a little bit more space size and the color so we can see it. So let's add a data source for this then. So I'm going to go into, I have a HUD manager that's currently on the canvas, so I'm going to piggyback on that one initially, because this I already do piggyback on it, because I grab a reference to my new HUD here. So this one I'm going to have to move over here eventually. So now let's see if I can type here with the microphone in my face. I guess I'm going to have to get a little bit used to that. So what do I want to do? I want to, we have the UI document here already, and you can have multiple data sources for, let's stock this here actually while we work on this. I don't have to keep opening it. So you can set the data source further down the hierarchy, but I think I'm going to try to stick with one data source at least initially and see how that works out. So I feel like I have one point of entry, and this is also going to have to hook up with the save system, or I have to keep the save system in mind. But let's just, before I rush sidetrack here, I'm going to just get this going, and then we can think about the save stuff too. So we have the UI document here already, and we have that, and then we can set the data source. And maybe I can set this here. So now the HUD manager is the data source. And I suppose, so what you can do, a private should show up, serialized probably can show up, public gonna show up. So if I make just a test public, float, or an int, foo, here, that one probably should show up too. Let's see what we get now. So we put this, let's put it on the top container, the data source here. And I'm going to go with type. And I suppose you can data source path, the path to the value in the data source used by this binding. Okay, so you can narrow it down with this one, but here's where we actually set the type then. I'm not going to narrow it down now. So I guess if you have a data hierarchy, you could narrow it down here. So here we have the HUD manager. Okay. And if I now were to bind this, so I'm going to go to the label that I did before here. So this one inherits the data source type. So once you set it up somewhere here, it knows the type it's going to get, but it doesn't know the instance. So it only knows what kind of data source that will be attached to it. If I were to use object, I would have an instance, but then I have to keep changing a scriptable object, which I don't want. So we go with type. We say which type, which is the HUD manager for now. Maybe I want to have a HUD data class. Let's see. Once we start organize it. So now we have data source path here. Okay, so we get UI document. And that's because I had that serialized. So we get serialized fields and everything that one serializes too. Oh, that could be handy. And there we have this foo I did at the bottom. Can I select it, or is it going to hide it for me? There. Binding mode, to target, to source, two-way, to target. That's it. We're never going to send anything back. So let's add this binding, save it, and hopefully we should get the number 1 there, because that's what I set as a default. We did. So we bind this there. And I was thinking I was going to do it like this before. So I would grab, so if you're going to hook up the weapon first, I would grab the player weapon controller. And this one is where we set the player weapon and level of the weapon. So we can just go ahead, take the shortcut here, right? Navigate to F12, should remember that. And here I would then expose the like the level here. So we can get it exposed public int level. And then I will go back here. Back here, the HUD manager. Because we have the player weapon there, we can now expose that one here, int player weapon level and player weapon controller level. And because this is a computed property, I think we're also going to have to add the create property attribute here, but let's just check first. So we go back here, and on the label, we remove or edit the binding, and we call this weapon level, and we don't have that here, but I see already we get everything serialized in the play weapon controller, including the private serialized fields. So might not even have to do what I was planning to do. So, but I'm just going to check it first anyway. Good to know. So if I do create property here, and then we go back and we edit this binding. There we have weapon level. So would that work? So I start the game. Something did not work. HUD manager needs, of course, reference to the player weapon. So let's inject that here. And let's go again. Okay, so it says a 1 now. And that should be because we have a 1 here. So if I change this, 2. Okay, so it's bound. So this works just fine. And this is way more convenient than have to have all these different events and events listeners that you have to keep updating and that get sending stuff back and forth everywhere in the code. It's going to make it way more organized. Look how that's beautiful. And of course, this made it very clear when you have weapon level here. But I had to, it seems like I wouldn't even have to do it like this, because as far as I could see, it should be enough to just have this instance here. And then I could remove, and I don't have to expose this one here too. I kind of like to think that the less a class have to know about the things around it, the better. So if I don't have to expose things for no particular reason, so be it. So now we have only this addition here, and if I then go back to the label here, and we change this binding from weapon level, if we don't even have it anymore, and then I just go directly to the player weapon controller weapon level. Which would mean in HUD manager, I just have to gather a few references to stuff I want to show in the HUD. And as long as those fields are serialized, this one can access it. Could it even do other stuff? Let's check that. Not sure. Doesn't matter. Because if it cannot, in those cases, I just make an exposed public property. But let's check so it works first. Okay, this one works fine too. Of course, using a public property makes it very clear what's going on. But well, I should also try to change here, right? But oh, it works beautiful. So nice. So that means we can hook this one up with this one. With this one, where it's a custom element. So we're going to have to implement our own functionality there to handle this binding. And now I saw one thing that I want to fix right away. Before I forget that, because one thing that happens to me all the time is that I add something new to my documents, and by default, like this label here, the picky mode is position. And that means you're going to intercept user input, the raycasting that happens on every single user interface panel. So it's going to block anything behind it. And like for instance, if I wouldn't turn that off on this one, set the picky mode to ignore, it will block my touch controller. And this has to be done on every single one because the default is ignore. I suppose I could, no, you cannot even set this from USS, I don't think. From USS, you can only set the values below here, starting at the style sheet. So you cannot make a global ignore. You could, of course, traverse the entire document but once you instantiate it and look for mistakes and fix them before you show the interface to the user, but that's doesn't feel really good. So what I like to do for many things like this, not only UXML, for component settings, like I want to make sure that every rigid body has body type dynamic or kinematic, or that gravity is enabled, or that collision detection is changed to, or interpolate is set to interpolate and not none. Anything that has to be on every object or a certain type of objects, like that every enemy is tagged enemy, if I have added that, and so on. I like to use the test runner for that. So I use the test runner for two things. I use it for classic, ordinary unit tests and play mode tests, but I also use it to validate that I don't make any mistakes in the editor. So let's just quickly whip up one here that makes sure now, once we start building the HUD, that I don't forget to change picky mode to ignore. That shouldn't take very long, and I have time flies every time, but it shouldn't take very long. So I have in my edit mode tests, asset validation. Here I put tests to validate different assets. So once I start to keep adding more stuff like the enemies, it's gonna keep growing to ensure that I don't make any mistakes. And I run these tests every time I make a new build automatically, so I can catch them very easy. Any mistake I do, I can catch very easily. So let's just make a new, let's call this one, let's be specific here because I don't know if I'm gonna have to do any other checks when it comes to UI. So I'll start with HUD validation tests. There we go. And so what we want to do here is, let's just set up a quick test here. I like to, once I build a new class that's going to integrate with Unity, and somehow I just like to quickly just get some boilerplate set up just to see that it works. And what do we need to import? Not this one, I don't think. Not this one too. That should be it. So now we should, hopefully in the test runner, there we have the new test suite here, HUD validation tests. And it goes green because that check can never fail. So I like to name my test usually with, when it comes to unit test, with the method that I'm checking, what I'm checking and what result I expect. But here we're not really check a specific method because I validate assets. So I'm just going to name it the asset we check. And we check for picking mode is ignore. That's a test. And because maybe I'm going to rename this class later on to something that do tests of other similar assets. So let's just do a very quick test. We're going to load that asset from the database. So this is a UXML asset. And sometimes I use find assets, and that's UXML. It's visual tree asset then. Right. And then you have to search on the type. But now I would use that if I, for instance, were looking for all my enemy, then I would search for type enemy and get every enemy in the game in one single query here. But now I know which file I want to have that I'm going to test. So I'm just going to grab that one directly. Then I don't have to worry about which type to use there because I'm just going to use the C# class name. Load asset at path, and here we can use the generic method instead to pass in that we want to have a visual tree asset. And then the path, and the path should be assets. I like this rider that it autocomplete my project folder. UI, UXML, and HUD. So there we have the file, and that's just the UXML file. Now there are two ways we could test this. My blind, there we have it. So we could just, it's just text, we could parse it and we could look for pick and mode ignore and have a regex that find all of those and make sure it's ignored, but I don't really think that looks very clean or nice. So let's instead actually instantiate it. So we create the container because we have it here, and it would be, if I remember, we take this one and we can, no, what would command be? What it was, instantiate. We should effect asset. Well, that kind of explains it, right? Visual tree asset. And that should probably make more sense. There. So there we have an instance of it, and this instance should contain children, right? And we're going to have to parse this recursively, but that should be fine. We just put the assertion in a separate method, so we can just make something here. Private void validate picking mode. There we go. And we want to pass in here the actual, all the children, the collection. So that would be visual elements, right? And I cannot spell. I'm going to blame the microphone a few times here because I'm not used to having that in my face. So here we can validate, and then we pass in here. We're going to go validate picking mode. And we pass in container children. Remove that, remove that, remove that. So I'm not going to make any nice is that, this, then that builder pattern syntax here, but just do a fail if we don't find what we want, just to keep this simple and fast, because this is just to catch any simple mistakes that can easily happen when you edit a file in the editor. So we're gonna just through these, and there I destroyed the thing, so we're gonna go with element, and for each element we're just gonna check if element picking mode is not ignore, then we fail the build, right? And because it's recursive, recursively validate the children of this element, right? Element. Then we call this validate picking mode here again with the children of this one, right? Element, and children. There we go. And here we're just going to do assert fail. Can we send a message here? Would that message show? Full. Just going to check. Should work. And we're going to get some kind of message here. And the label should, the new label should have the wrong picking mode, so it should fail on that one. Let's try. Okay, we have a fail. And we got, there we have full. Okay, so we got the message too. So maybe that's good. I was thinking I'm going to log an error here, but that message should be good enough, right? So we do, so if I do like this, we shall, no, not, it have to be that formal element name doesn't have picking mode set to ignore. So this should be able to catch any mistakes. So if I build this now, or if I run this now, okay, it failed, and element with no name. Why didn't it have a name? Element. That was weird, right? If I do with debug, log error. Or is that one nameless? Maybe it was nameless. Probably nameless. So if I were to go back in here, clear this filter, and I go back to the HUD, and I just give it a name. Toolbar, save. And now I run this again. Okay, element foobar does not pick a mode, and same here. Then we stick with only the assert fail. That should be enough. Okay, so this is good. So now, if there's a mistake that some element gonna block the user input, the build gonna fail, and they're gonna tell which element that was offending. So if I now back here, set this one to ignore, now the test runner shouldn't complain anymore, right? Right, so we're back to green. Perfect, so that's going to be handy to have that one sitting there. I should probably do that for some of my other documents I have too, where it makes sense. So now let's try to wire up the custom non-allocation label with this one, with runtime bindings. So So how that works is, first of all, I'm now spamming that one with the frame count, I think it was. Right. So we set the label like this, and this is what we want to avoid. We don't want to have to set anything like this anymore. And we don't even want to we don't even want to grab references to this. So the HUD manager should probably be renamed to HUD data. It's just collecting the data that we want to display. Then it doesn't need to know anything about the actual user interface or how that is constructed or what stuff is called. As long as the data is up to date, the user interface is going to take care of it and make sure. So we have this. I'm still not sure if I want to take this shortcut and just pick these directly. Because I can imagine because I have the reference here why this one is here. I can imagine when I open this up in 2 months, I'm going to wonder why is that one here when nothing is using it. Can of course used for runtime bindings. Then I'm going to know to the HUD XML. Or I can make it even clearer by adding a property. So I have the property weapon level here. I'm going to have to think, let's see when it starts to grow. I'm going to have about, I would guess about 10 properties here. So once I know where they will come from and this class have all the data, we can get a better feeling for how to make this as clean as possible. For now, I'm just going to do the shortcut and get it directly from here. So let's go back to the HUD. And we're now going to add a runtime binding for this custom element here. I don't even have anything exposed to bind to here. So I cannot even do a runtime binding right now. So let's give it a property we can bind to. So it's a label. But I don't use strings here. And I think right now every label is going to be an integer. So I'm gonna start by using an integer here, and then we can see once we add more elements if that's enough or if we need to handle different kind of formats like a float or a text string. Not sure yet, but for now we just create the value here. Public int value. And we can give it a default of 0. And let's see if that one shows up here. No, we don't have a value here yet. Let's close this one down here. Because, of course, we need to also tell its attribute. So there we have a value. And can we bind? We can bind. And then I could bind the weapon level to this one. Add binding. So far so good, but right now we do nothing with that one. So it should still just be nothing, I suppose, because we only have a value bound here, but that value is unused. So when we do, before we pass it into set text here, and pass in the value here. So what I want to do here is, I suppose, make this into computer property, right? And I'm not sure how UI Toolkit works with computer properties, but I guess this is how you have to do it. And I want this to be auto property, right? Oops. Can we convert this to private? To auto property. Okay, and I suppose I'm going to need to have a backing field here then anyway. So I'm going to need to have a private int value. And then I'm going to have get value, right? And set gonna value. So, and here we also then call set text with value. That one I'm not sure why. Do I have to add a create property here too? Not sure. So I have value, it's bound. Oh, look at that. So that seems to work fine. So we can keep this at a 0, save it. And if I now run the game, didn't update. So it something is more has to be done. Yeah, I know. Okay. Now we need attention. So yeah, I know. He likes to push his nose on my arm to get it away from the mouse. Okay. So, and if I change this one now, we update one, but not our custom label yet. So, yeah, 10 more minutes, then we can take you out. 10 more minutes. Oh, I should have some treats for him here. That would be okay. So that one didn't update. So we set the value here. But it did update in editor, but not during runtime. That was weird. Did I accidentally set the value here? Could that be it? And now I cannot create the binding here anymore. So maybe this is where you need to use that create property. Should it be? I know. And now I have nothing here. So yeah, one more timer. You're not gonna leave me alone? When I try to figure this out, you should leave me a little bit alone right now. So yeah, is that good enough? Okay. Okay. Can we be on my other arm? Can we come to this side? Good. Okay. So, so the value didn't seem to be set. So, okay. Let's see if we can calm down. So, yeah, I know you're here. Okay. So maybe he gonna cut this short here because I'm running into my last 5 minutes here anyway. So, but I would like to solve this problem here before I end this for today. If you can allow me to do that, can you do that? Yeah, you can be down there. Yeah, be down there. Yeah, no licking. Go down. Yeah, good boy. Down. Yeah, good boy. Don't come back up. So now let's see here. So this one didn't update. And I suppose it actually gets the, I suppose it doesn't get the runtime binding data. And because it doesn't really bind here anymore. So something stopped it from binding. And could it be that I need to use create property here? Oops. But once this is working, I can reuse, it's going to work on every custom. Now we got edit binding again. So maybe that was it then. So if I save this now and I run the game, there we go. Look at that. It says you have a binding. And if I change this one now, oh, that's nice. So now our custom non-allocation free string component can be updated with runtime bindings. Oh, that's going to be so useful. I'm going to keep this very, very clean. So that's working fine. So I'm going to start moving stuff a little bit around here because I'm going to attach, this one is actually going to be up here and replace the 6 here. And I'm going to start adding in more elements. And start wiring them up one by one. But I only have 5 minutes left here before I'm going to end this. And but I'm not actually I'm gonna keep doing this, I think, on my next stream, because I don't have to finish this today. Once I close the stream, actually gonna implement performance checker, and that's gonna take me some time. I want to be able to run automatic performance checks on the builds to ensure I don't get any performance regressions. And I want to do that early on now before I add too much stuff to this new version of the game. So I'm gonna stop here, and I created its own branch. I'm just gonna commit that to this branch, and then I can return to this once I stream again, which is probably gonna be on Monday. I have some other stuff to do on the weekend, and I want to keep this on for weekdays only. So if you find this interesting, I will keep going from this point to the next stream. But what I can do now, I have a little bit remaining time, is to start reorganizing a little bit here. So this one here is gonna go. So I have made the HUD is gonna be. I have 3 main containers. See if I can get a little bit more space here. So I have the left, the center, and the right. And I haven't set, these are automatically sized now. We're gonna set the correct sizes here. And the left and the right gonna have fixed size, and the center is the one that can grow, and that's why the radar can grow and use a little bit more space on wider screens. So probably should start renaming this here now. So we're gonna call this one left, right, and center. So, and if I remember correctly, I have this around 400. But so the radar is gonna go in the center. So we have the radar start around here. So it's this one. So we're gonna move to the center. Then I'm gonna have to start removing a little bit stuff from the old HUD so it doesn't get too messy here. And this one here, right now it is the weapon level that I want to have over here. And then we're going to add a score here. I can do that right away. So I'm going to go to project and HUD, label non-alloc, and we can add a score here. So these containers, they are flex containers, and they seem to place them sideways now, right? Let's see here. So right, it goes from there. So I'm probably gonna have to change the. We should go from up to down. This is my non-alloc that wanna jump out to the side for some reason. So my non-alloc sits outside the container. Why does it do that? Relative position. Row. Okay. Well, I'm out of time now anyway, so I'm gonna start doing a little bit layout work here, and I'm gonna remove the old canvas part that are behind it to not make it too messy. And then next time I'm gonna keep working on wiring up more runtime bindings here between the HUD and the gameplay, and figure out how to best organize it. So that's it for today then. And any questions or anything you want to ask me, please feel free to come to my Discord server, and I'm happy to talk about anything that I've been doing here. Other than that, have a nice weekend and see you in the next one. Cheers.